Before Genghis Khan, before Saladin, there was a lion who ruled the wind. With only 40,000 riders, he shattered an empire 1,000 years old. His name was Alp Arslan, and this is the story of how the Turks changed history forever. They called it the edge of the world, the windswept plains of Manzikert, where the mountains of Anatolia stretched toward the endless eastern steppe. In the summer of 1071, the air shimmered with heat, dust, and destiny. Across those plains, two civilizations met, one ancient and weary, the other young and relentless. The fate of empires, faiths, and continents would be decided in a single day. For 1,000 years, the Byzantine Empire had stood as the heir of Rome, a fortress of civilization between East and West. Its emperors ruled from the shining city of Constantinople, their walls and domes glittering over the Bosphorus. But time had carved deep cracks into the empire's strength. Greed and intrigue weakened its court, rebellions burned at its borders, and in the east, a new power had risen, a storm of horsemen from the heart of the steppe, the Seljuk Turks. They were born of wind and war, riders who lived and died in the saddle. Their arrows struck from beyond sight, their tactics flowed like smoke, and at their head rode Sultan Alp Arslan, the heroic lion, a warrior king whose name already carried fear across Persia and Mesopotamia. Young, brilliant, and deeply devout, he was more than a conqueror. He was a man who understood the psychology of battle and the limits of power. When Emperor Romanos IV Diogenes ascended the Byzantine throne, he was determined to restore the empire's fading glory. He believed the Turks were nothing but raiders, nomads with no discipline, a pest that could be crushed with one decisive strike. In the spring of 1071, Romanos assembled one of the largest armies the empire had ever seen. From the valleys of the Balkans came armored cavalry. From the west, Frankish and Norman mercenaries. From Armenia and Georgia, seasoned archers and spearmen. More than 200,000 men, gleaming with steel and confidence, set out to reclaim the lands lost to the Seljuks. The march east was long and slow. The empire's banners, golden crosses and double-headed eagles, shimmered under the sun. Every step of that journey carried arrogance, the belief that the Turks would scatter at the first sight of imperial might. But far beyond the horizon, Alp Arslan was watching. He had been deep in Syria, negotiating peace with the Fatimids, when he learned of the Byzantine invasion. He did not hesitate. Abandoning his southern campaign, he gathered his elite horsemen and began a furious ride northward, through deserts, mountains, and rivers, a journey of nearly 1,000 miles. His men rode without rest, surviving on handfuls of grain, their horses sleeping in motion. To them, it was not just war. It was jihad, a defense of their faith, their homeland, and their honor. By mid-August, Alp Arslan's scouts reached the plains near Manzikert, where the Byzantine army had already captured the nearby fortress. Romanos believed he had forced the Turks into retreat. In truth, the Sultan had chosen the battlefield himself. On the evening before battle, Alp Arslan gathered his commanders beneath the open sky. There were no thrones, no golden tents, only the wind and the sound of horses breathing. He stood before them in a simple white robe, his face calm but resolute. He said, "Brothers, we are not here for conquest or plunder. We are here for our faith, to defend what we believe in. I am no sultan to you now. I am one of you, and if I fall, this robe shall be my shroud." Those words burned into the hearts of every warrior who heard them. That night, the Turks slept lightly, beneath the same stars that had guided their ancestors across the steppe. Dawn broke over Manzikert like a blade of fire. The horizon trembled with the movement of men and horses. The Byzantine army, a vast sea of shields and banners, stretched for miles. Drums thundered, horns blared, and the earth shook under iron boots. Romanos rode at the front, confident, armored in gold, believing he faced no more than a fragment of the Turkish host. But across the plain, Alp Arslan's army formed into the ancient shape of the crescent. It was not an accident. It was the key to the Turan tactic, the weapon of the steppes. His center was light and flexible, his flanks coiled and ready to strike. When the signal came, the Seljuk archers unleashed a black storm of arrows. The air screamed. The first ranks of Byzantines fell before they could even close the distance. Every time they advanced, the Turks melted away, only to reappear and strike again. By midday, the Byzantines had grown impatient. Their heavy armor burned under the sun. They charged again and again, but the enemy would not stand still. Then, at last, the Turks began to fall back, slowly, deliberately. Their banners dipped, their center retreated. It looked like a rout. Romanos, seeing the supposed collapse, ordered a full advance. The imperial army surged forward, hundreds of banners moving as one. But what the emperor did not see was the trap closing. The more his soldiers chased, the more the line stretched thin across the open plain. Dust rose like smoke, hiding everything. Trumpet calls vanished in the noise. The left flank lost contact with the right. By late afternoon, the Byzantine army was no longer a line. It was a long, broken column, exhausted and blind. Then, as the sun began to set behind the hills, the Turks turned. From the wings of the crescent came thunder. Thousands of horsemen wheeled inward, their war cries slicing through the chaos. The horns of the Seljuks sounded, one, then another, then 100. The retreat became an explosion. Arrows poured in from every side. The air was alive with death. The Byzantine ranks wavered, then shattered. What had been an army became a sea of panic. Commanders lost control. The emperor's standard disappeared in the storm. Men trampled each other in their flight. The once mighty host of Byzantium, the pride of 1,000 years, was reduced to dust and terror. Night fell on a battlefield of fire and screams. The plain of Manzikert was littered with broken shields, dead horses, and the silence of defeat. By dawn, the Seljuks had hunted down what remained. Among the captured was the emperor himself, Romanos Diogenes, wounded, his armor dented, his pride destroyed. When he was brought before Alp Arslan, there was no cruelty. The Sultan stood quietly, wearing the same white robe he had worn in battle. He looked at the fallen emperor and asked softly, "What would you have done if I had been captured by you?" Romanos, bleeding and weary, answered truthfully, "Perhaps I would have killed you." Alp Arslan smiled, not with arrogance, but with wisdom. "My punishment is heavier," he said. "You are free." That moment became legend. In a world ruled by vengeance, the conqueror chose mercy. And that mercy echoed across generations, transforming Alp Arslan into not just a victor, but a symbol of honor. The consequences of Manzikert were greater than any could have imagined. With the Byzantine army shattered, the empire's eastern defenses collapsed. Within a few years, the Turks poured freely into Anatolia, settling its valleys and mountains. Cities rose, Konya, Sivas, Kayseri, the heartlands of a new Turkish world. The old Roman lands of Asia Minor became the homeland of the Turks forever. For Byzantium, the defeat was fatal. It never fully recovered. Civil wars erupted, generals rebelled, and emperors fell. The door that Alp Arslan had opened would never again be closed. From that doorway, centuries later, would emerge the Ottoman Empire itself, the heirs of the steppe, the children of Manzikert. Historians often say that Manzikert was not won by swords, but by strategy. The Turan tactic, the feigned retreat, the crescent formation, the closing wings, had been used for centuries by Turkic and Mongol riders. But at Manzikert, it reached perfection. It was not just military genius, it was psychological warfare. Alp Arslan understood that victory begins in the mind, that panic is deadlier than steel, and that speed and illusion can destroy the slow weight of empire. The world remembers the moment of the trap closing, when 40,000 riders surrounded 200,000 soldiers and crushed an empire that had stood for a millennium. But the true victory lay not in blood. It lay in the idea that intelligence can overcome might. When the dust settled, the plain was silent again. The sun rose over a land forever changed. Some said they saw the Sultan riding alone among the fallen, his white robe stained with dust, his face calm, neither triumphant nor sorrowful, as if he understood that history itself had shifted beneath his horse's hooves. Manzikert was more than a battle. It was the turning of an age, the end of one empire and the dawn of another. And it all began with a plan drawn in the shape of a crescent by a man who fought not for conquest, but for destiny. Because on that day, on the lonely plains of Manzikert, 40,000 men changed the fate of a 1,000-year empire, and the world learned that sometimes the sharpest blade is not made of steel, but of strategy.